Hello friends, Nayaswami Remon here, and it's time to ask a yogi. Somebody from India wrote to me and they were very disappointed that India lost the World Cup in what we say soccer, they say football. And the whole country was praying, she wrote. Even the players and their families prayed so much. Now I'm sure the winning team Australia did the same. They all gave their best. Now, what's more important, efficiency, luck, or prayer? Oh, life is so much fun. Okay. The question I really want to address is the connection, the nexus between success, material success, and God's grace. This has been a theme of scriptures and saints and teachers down through the ages. We have the success gospel, the prosperity gospel is another term, the nexus between the Protestant work ethic, so-called, the success, we see it in the Jewish tradition, one's material success is indication of God's favor upon you. Well, what is the nexus? Because as we awaken spiritually, God supposedly gives us in the book of Genesis dominion over all things. Well, we certainly do seem to strive for that when you think of our materialistic sciences and the various breakthroughs in understanding nature and the products in medicine and science and cell phones and computers and DNA and all these things. That does seem to be warp and woof with our destiny in some ways. That we abuse these things is practically a given, I'm sorry to say. That's our fall from grace. So what is the nexus? When Job in the Old Testament had all wonderful signs of material success, and God allowed the devil to tempt him and take these away to see if he would remain faithful, which he did. So what is that nexus? Well, there's certainly a nexus. But just as the healthiest person in the world is not necessarily very spiritual, that nexus is tentative. And just as somebody who suffers a lot, after all, Jesus suffered on the cross, but just somebody with ill health, a yogi or saint who suffers medical problems, does that mean they're not spiritual? Well, I think the answer to all of these questions are obvious, but there lurks in our consciousness and in our various spiritual tradition the question, the affirmation of the nexus between material success and spiritual consciousness. In fact, my teacher and founder of Ananda, Swami Kriyananda, wrote an entire 26-week course in using material success through yoga principles. And so there is a nexus, but the nexus to be truly successful spiritually needs to be linked to spiritual consciousness. It's really quite that simple. And the nexus revolves around the idea of non-attachment. In other words, my seeking, my goal of material success must be linked with the desire to know God. Well, why would you link those two things? Well, several reasons are possible. It can be your karma. You may have unfulfilled material desires, so why not convert those material desires, since they're lurking and pressing upon you? Why not link them to the service of God's work, for example, to help sow the seeds of spiritual awakening through the gifting of your material success to the divine work of God and Guru. Well, okay, that certainly makes sense, doesn't it? The other thing is that, to some extent, think of all the miracles of the saints. Is that not material success? Is that not mind over matter? Is that not showing the power of God the power bestowed upon us, as Genesis says, in dominion over all things. And to a certain extent it does. I think of the Saint Sai Baba, who performed all sorts of miracles of a material and in many ways a kind of useless nature in terms of functionality, but to demonstrate the power of grace, the power of God. So there's any number of reasons for making that nexus between material success and divine power, divine grace, etc. One has to be careful. Just as in the tradition of India, all the powers that the Yoga Sutras speak of in the third pada, or third book of the Yoga Sutras, we are warned not to misuse those powers for egoic satisfaction. Just as Jesus was tempted by the devil to have dominion over all things if he would but worship all things, to worship that success, which is the embodiment of the satanic force. And so there is a nexus, but it's a very challenging one. But the reality is this: you will never achieve cosmic consciousness without those powers. Do you see the trick there? And so we shouldn't seek them for their sake. But armed with God consciousness, with God's power, there is nothing withheld from us. It's a very tricky subject. So the solution is also very simple. Seek God first, God alone. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things shall be added unto you. Okay?